welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show, Season 5. And sitting beside me, I know you guys are already asking, who is that beautiful young lady? It's no other than the hottest new podcast coming out, Jessica Javens Talk. I'd like to welcome her as my celebrity co-host. What's up, baby girl?
Thank you so much for having me, Andre. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here. I'm having so much fun in Indiana. First time I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. So thank you for
You
all
coming
of it.
back, right? You moving here?
No,
Bringing the family to
that's
Indiana?
a lot of people to bring, Andre.
So you're getting ready to launch a new podcast this spring, Jessica Javens Talks. How did the name come up? How did that name
It
come
has
about?
to be raw. It has to be straight to the point, right? So it's my name, it's talk, but the talk is all about an amazing thing. So it is a podcast about transforming a life inside out into a life you truly love, like I'm loving my life.
Right. Before we introduce our guests, go a little bit deeper. You talk about transforming because we see a lot of podcasts that's talking about empowerment, beast mindset. What was a moment in your life that you can reflect to the viewers that they can resonate to why you actually did the podcast?
I would say it started after my 40s. I went into another level in life and a new change or transformation had to start. I didn't know how yet, but it really didn't matter because it just happened because that's how much I wanted it and how passionate I was. So when you have that dream, the house will take care of itself. You know what I'm saying? So it was one thing after another because it needs to be all quadrants of life. Andre, you know that you can't just be happy with your health and everything else is falling apart. It needs to be the whole thing. So that's what we talk about in my podcast, all quadrants of life. So health, physical, mental, spiritual, finances, family relationships, connections, community, all of that.
Well, damn, you're a straight up smorgasbord. I love it. Make sure you guys tune in to the Jessica Javens Talk podcast produced by the I Am Beast Studio Network. Today, we're gonna go deep. You like wine?
Oh man, let's
What's your
get
what's,
started.
what's your favorite? What's your favorite wine?
That's difficult to say. I can tell you this, give you the basics. I don't enjoy sweet wine.
Why?
I like the real stuff.
Why you don't like? Oh. If it's in a bottle and it says wine, does it really matter that it's
Oh,
sweet?
you're gonna find out today, Andre.
Okay, I'm gonna find out. Okay, so let me tell you about this guest that's coming on the show. A definitely wine connoisseur. I think there's a specific word for it. I don't know what it is, but he's gonna tell us what that word is. But he's getting ready to launch in Florida a wine bar. I'm definitely want to be there for that grand opening. But he's also an educator in the art of wine and the different flavors, the different textures. We even gonna talk about a palate because I understand that you got to have a palate to understand
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah, it's a whole world of discoveries on that.
I must really suck because
Fascinating.
we got tons of wine and I'm kind of like shocked. I don't even know what's there. I just go buy it
Yeah, we're not going to the supermarket anymore. We're gonna learn how.
and we're gonna learn. And today on the show, all the way from Florida, is the one, the only Mr. Wine connoisseur himself, Jason Javens. What's up, big guy?
Hey Andre, how are you? I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor and looking forward to talking about my favorite topic.
And let me first say I love the beard.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. When I
I
grow
hope.
up, I want to have one like yours.
Thank you. So before we get into the wine, tell the viewers a little bit about you.
Well, I was born in Brazil, born and raised in Brazil. American father, Brazilian mom, and moved back to the States 2002. So going on 23 years. Come from a banking background, corporate background, and looking for some midlife changes, and looking to turn a what was a hobby, a very big hobby of mine, into an actual business.
Let's go back a little bit deeper. You said Brazilian heritage. What's it like growing up in Brazil before you came to the United States, and what did you know about the United States prior to coming over, actually permanently moving here?
Right. Well, Brazil was fine. I mean, I was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil, which is the largest city in Brazil, and I think fourth or fifth largest city in the world. So it's a big city living, right? So I guess and it was fine. We had a family business down there. We worked in the family business, and decided to make some changes. At the time, a couple years before I moved, I had a daughter, and I wanted to raise my daughter in the U.S.
Mhm.
Uh, Somewhere a little more stable, a little safer. So we made the plunge, my ex-wife and I, and we moved to the States, came to Florida.
How did you determine what part of this, what state you wanted to relocate to? I mean, this is the United States. We got thousands of great places to start a family.
Absolutely. You know, we have family in both California and Oregon, and obviously my closer family at the time, my grandparents, uncle and aunt, they wanted us moving to Oregon, but we figured Florida because my ex is Brazilian, big family. So Florida was kind of like a halfway between where the American family is and where the Brazilian family is. So it's just easier access. So we just kind of arbitrarily picked Florida. And it turned out to be a good choice. There's a large Brazilian community here. So the fit was nice for her, especially for her.
What is it like when you say Brazilian community? And one thing, let me tell you, one thing about the show is we educate, and a lot of the education is me asking questions. I know nothing about Brazil. I mean, I see the culture on TV, I see the dance, I see the heritage, and I see a strong, strong
Mm.
family value system put in place. If you was to tell me that there's a Brazilian community somewhere, I would be dumbfounded.
Mm-hmm.
But what's it like? What explain the Brazilian family tie? What is that like compared to American family ties? There's definitely a distinction between the two.
There is some distinction. Obviously, you can't lay out a rule for everybody,
Right.
but I think that the main thing is there's a big difference within the Latin community, right? And Brazil definitely is a Latin country. It's not a Hispanic country. We speak Portuguese, right? Brazil is a colony of Portugal, as opposed to the other countries in South America. Um, but we are Latin or Latino, right? So you have a little bit of that Latino feel, that warmth, and the although my family's not very big, but you have very much that big family culture, right? And everybody's is reuniting with some member of the family over the weekend, and the big Sunday lunch and all that. So it's very similar to the Portuguese and the Italian cultures, which are I would say both of the major immigrants that came to Brazil. Although today it's a melting pot, but
Right.
I think most of the immigrant portion came from Portugal and Italy.
What were some of the most difficult transition moments for you and your family coming here from abroad that you can remember?
Well, thankfully, I didn't go through the process that typical immigrants go through, which is you have to get a green card somehow, and then authorization to work and all that stuff. I've always been a U.S. citizen from birth, even though I was born in Brazil. I was registered there as an American citizen born abroad,
Mm.
and and grew up always coming to the States, coming to visit. So at home we spoke English. I studied in an American school in São Paulo. So the the American culture was very much inbred at home. So for me, it wasn't much of a shock. Now for my ex, a little bit more, because then you feel a little bit more of that of the difference, even language wise,
Mm.
right? But to me, it was in that sense, it was a smooth transition. I mean, you go through the regular, let's call them hiccups, right? Of moving to, even though I was a citizen, I was still an immigrant to the country. I had never
Right.
lived here before, right? So you're starting from scratch again. You notice things like, okay, your resume, all the experience that you have abroad really doesn't matter much
Mm.
when you're in the country. People are looking for experience in the country. So my background experience in marketing, advertising, and things like that kind of went out the window, and I made a shift into banking early on, and I was in banking for about 18 years in the U.S.
How hard was that to make that shift? Because when we usually get comfortable in one particular field, now you still have to make a living. You got to have what we might call true sustainable income in a career because you have a daughter. How difficult was that, and how did the learning process change to go from where you went to in marketing to banking? Because now you're dealing with people's money and you're making decisions with financial institutions.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more inherent responsibility when you're talking about banking, right?
Mhm.
But even though I worked on the retail end of it, I was a branch manager, then a business banker, and I held a number of different positions. You're in banking, you're always in sales. So my background was always sales and marketing and advertising and things like that. So when you look at the sales aspect, the team leadership aspect, I already had a team that I managed in Brazil. The leap isn't that great because you're dealing with humans the same way, right? You're dealing with a product, and if you sell one product, you can sell the other. Now, when we're talking about compliance, then
Right.
it's completely different, right? Because so I come from an unregulated business or market into a heavily regulated market. So you have to learn, right? And so my first bank experience was with a bank that called Bank Atlantic back then. And they were looking for people that had the leadership, that had the sales, that had the initiative, and they weren't worried about the technical banking part of it. They were like, "Listen, we'll teach you banking. We just need these other skills that are inherent to you." And it was a group of us, and we went through this 6 month program pretty much
Mhm.
between classes and live training and everything like that to learn every aspect of retail banking there is.
You can ask a question.
No, I just want to say that the reason why his last name and mine are the same is because this is my brother here.
I was trying to say that, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought you forgot.
No,
Okay.
I was trying to save that, but we're gonna get into that in a minute. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Let me ask another question. You're in the country. What were some of the what were some of the shocking things that you witnessed here since you know from coming from Brazil to here to going to transition that you never thought in your wildest dreams you would ever see happening in this country that you moved to? Because I mean, the media will portray a particular country or city or a country a particular way. And a lot of times when you come to what they call the American dream, it's not really the American dream like it was portrayed. What was some of those experiences like for you?
Oh, I agree with you because I guess every country wants to showcase their best side,
Right, right.
right? Brazil included, countries in Europe, the whole world. That's the way they are. But so the vision of a country as a tourist, even me growing up and coming to visit the family, we were within the our American family and the culture and everything like that. Uh, it's a different viewpoint than living the day to day, right? In the country. So yeah, of course there are a lot of changes. So that idea of the U.S. as being the land of dreams, right? The land of possibilities. I remember when I first moved here, a brother of a friend of mine was living here already. So we got together and he introduced me to some other people, and a lot of these were within the Brazilian community in Florida. And the number one topic of conversation was everybody was papers. You have papers. Oh, for you, it's going to be, you're a citizen. For you, it's going to be a piece of cake. You don't have to go through immigration process because all these people went through all that, right, in
Mhm.
order to get their, whether it was a green card or citizenship or something like that. So they're looking at me like, ah, for you, it's going to be a walk in the park. And it's not a walk in the park. Well, you just have, okay, there was one step that I didn't have to go through, which was, yes, deal with my legal immigration, right? I could just get a job, move to the country, and get a job the next day if I wanted to.
Right.
But you have to reinvent yourself. I believe that even if we moved from the U.S. to Canada, which is a very, very similar culture, you're
Right.
still kind of okay, trying to get situated within the country, trying to figure out what's what and who's who. So I think we all go through some of these challenges. And I guess my challenges were more towards work, right? Having not only to change countries but change a career than culturally speaking.
Right.
right? But they're challenges nonetheless.
Now, let's go back to this particular addressment.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go back even deeper. You and your sister carry a good bond with each other, right? Tell me how the how,
We have,
tell me how the duet happened with you guys singing together, where she sings a song and you play the guitar. How did that come about?
What's up? I told him about what's up.
really, we're going to bring that up right here? Are
Yeah,
we
we're
going to
gonna
bring
bring it
that
up. You never
up?
know what you're gonna get on this show.
Yeah, Jessica, watch out for those childhood stories. You have some
Yeah.
filter there.
How did that?
Uh,
I thought it was beautiful when she shared that. How did that happen, man? It was, and
Uh,
when she told me, I was like, "That's kind of cool. Let's put that
I
out."
love this about him. He just took upon
yeah,
himself to learn guitar. He never had one class. At the age of 14 or 15, he started it and he became amazing. Anyways, I'll let him tell you.
So tell me how that song came about. That song in particular.
yeah. Well, let's slow down with the amazing first of all. It's just. But yeah, I'm self-taught with guitars. I always liked it. Never had the patience to go to class. So I've been playing guitar since I was, I don't know, probably 15. And Jessica, so music was always a big thing at home. I was in my bedroom blasting my stuff. She was in her bedroom blasting her stuff, and so we were always very musical. And she loves to sing. She has a great singing voice, and I don't. So although I like to sing, I'm not,
Yeah.
so the idea was always nice. Every time I had some kind of song that was either played by a woman or would better fit a higher pitched voice than mine, I'd love to always play and sing with Jessica. Yeah, so that's fun.
It was fun. We were when we were with our friends, we sometimes just sat down and with all of our friends there
Yeah.
and just hang out and he would play and I would sing or we would sing together. It was special.
So, what are some of the memorable moments that you give me? Give me three memorable moments, and I'm gonna give the same answer to your brother that you remember about your brother that today has impacted you.
I think it's the bond that we share. I remember having this experience of us being together with our friends and singing throughout many years of our lives. We traveled together. We had many friends in common. So I think that just as we were growing up into adulthood, it just strengthened our bond. And so much so that when I moved to the United States, I moved, where my brother was. I moved in 2006, a few years after him, and so we were always together. We're not far apart, and that's why I'm in Florida too, and I love it there. And I love that he's just a few minutes away, from where I live, and then our kids and everybody. So anyways, that's one part of it. The second part is I like that he's older than me, so I always could look up and learn from him. He always knew more. We were very competitive, by the way. So like even playing
Why
Monopoly.
do I not? Why do I already know that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe okay, I'll tell you that later. So, like if we were playing Monopoly or at cards, he would always win, right?
Would
And
he
then,
cheat?
huh?
Would he cheat?
I
Did you ever see him take a couple
I
extra $100
didn't.
bills?
No, I did. I don't think I saw him cheating, but I do know that there were times that I just start crying because I would never win, and he just start laughing.
And give me one more.
Um, I like that he helped me throughout school. He would always give me tips of how to deal with the kids that were mean, the bullies and all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So he would tell me, no, this is how you answer them. And this, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go with that.
Okay, now let's flip the script. Give me three impactful moments that Jessica had on your life.
I think the first thing I'm going to mention is not really a moment, it's just an overall, right? So Jessica always, I think, looked at life a little more seriously than I did, right? I was I don't know another word to describe it, but I was the slacker and she was the serious one,
I
and she
was
was
going
the
to
one
say
that
the
would
black
study,
sheep.
The black sheep.
that would re I'm the black sheep. So I think that in certain occasions in life, she kind of held me back on certain things that were good, and even though she was my younger sister, that I could kind of use her as a good example, as opposed to my, what is it, black sheepness. Okay. Um, another, but at the same on the same token, now going to like a second item, a couple times during life where I was caught red-handed, and I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, and so I'm talking about when we were, teenagers or kids, things like that, nothing, serious, but but she kind of backed me up, in the sense of she didn't go run and tell my parents, she would just, keep it together. And these are some stories that came years later when, my dad's passed away, but my mom doesn't care anymore. So now it's a thing that you laugh about, right? But back then I would have probably had a red behind for doing. So in that sense, those were things that I guess for the Jessica made an impact on me. And of course, she's my sister. I love her. I love the fact that we live close to each other, so we can have our family's so small,
Right.
so we could have this.
Now, let's move forward now. So you have ventured off into another part of your life,
Yeah.
wines. How did that come about?
Well, I've been a fan of wine since early 20s. I've been drinking wine. Obviously not to the intensity. I'm not talking about quantity. I'm just talking about, right, the seriousness or the dedication to it as I do today. And I guess I started off like most people do with, red table wine, the sweet stuff. I think Jessica mentioned before. Although when we get to sweet wine, there's a couple of interjections that I have in there regarding sweet wine. But I started
Bring
with the
it.
cheap stuff, right? I think like most people do. And then little by little started developing, started meeting people and talking about wine and it's always interesting. I think with everything in life, right? When you have somebody that takes you by the hand and kind of shows you things and kind of guides you through a process, whether it's one person or 50 people, I think it's easier for you. And that was my case in wine, right? Early on, I liked going into whenever I had the opportunity, going to a wine tasting or a wine event and kind of listen to that story behind the wine. Not only the technical sheet of the wine, like, oh, this tastes like this, tastes like that, but a bit of the story of the winery. Sometimes you're in a wine tasting with the winemaker or the owner themselves, and you hear that passion in their voice, and they're talking about, right, their passion. You can not absorb that. You can't help but absorb something like that, and so my passion for wine started growing exponentially throughout the
It's
years.
funny. You mentioned you started consuming wine like in the 20s. Um, I didn't start having my first drink till way, way later because I've always been an athlete, and I know some athletes do drink, but in professional bodybuilding, that was almost like complete taboo. I didn't do it, didn't want to do it. But I remember the first time I tried some wine, I didn't really have it. I didn't really care for it. I think the first wine that I really started to like, I was probably like in my 30s, and I had some Zinfandel and Pinot Grigio, and it's almost like it was good, but I got sick, from it, and but that's what I was told to start to drink first, and I was like, it's good, but I noticed after maybe a couple of glasses, it didn't wasn't my thing. So to go back to what Jessica said on the sweet wines and so forth, and this is a key question for me. If you got so many wines out, how do you make a cheap wine? Because isn't it the same process with every, like beer and
That's a
everything
good
else?
question. I
That's
want
a
to know
great
that
question.
more. Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, if you look at the process as fermentation, yeah, every wine is a fermented drink, so every wine goes through the same process of production.
Right.
Now, the difference is, you ask, like, why do you do cheap wine, right? So there are companies that mass produce wines, and those are what we call supermarket wines, right? And we all know some brands here or there. We're not going to mention them,
Right.
and they're inexpensive wines. They're cheap wines, really, for people that don't have, there's tons of people that like wine, enjoy wine, want to drink wine, but don't have the budget or the willingness to go and spend a couple bucks more on a bottle of wine, right? So they stick to the $4 or $5 bottles of wine that you can find at any supermarket. And those are the wines that I call them the McDonald's of wines, right? So if you're a person that enjoys wine, period, but not to the level of really analyzing nuances and really kind of tasting the wine and enjoying it as not a drink to quench your thirst or get a little buzzed with the alcohol, but something that you want to enjoy on another level. And you don't have to, right? Not everybody has that desire.
Mhm.
But when you have that, you have the person that goes to the supermarket, they buy their $5 wine, and that wine, and why I call it McDonald's of wines is because every time you go to McDonald's, you get a Big Mac, and you expect that Big Mac to taste exactly the same, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Brazil, or whether you're in China, right? You want that Big Mac experience. If you go somewhere and the Big Mac is different, you're like, what's this, right? Is McDonald's the best burger out there? By far, it's not, right? But they guarantee that you have that same experience. So some of these cheaper wines, they'll guarantee that you have that same experience. So it doesn't even, we talk about, and we can go into that if you want, vintage of wines and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Every wine producer puts, oh, this is a 2023 wine, 2022 wine. Some of these wines, they just put it on the label for traditional purposes
Right.
because that's what's expected in wine. But for those wines, it doesn't make a difference if you're drinking a 2019, a 2024, or a 2015. They're always going to be the same, right? And they achieve that by additives in the wine, unfortunately. And
Right.
that's where it comes into people having headaches. Oh, I got a headache with wine or sulfites.
Oh,
There's a lot of stories and theories of why people get headaches with wine. And most of them boil down to two things: wine with a ton of additives because it's an industrialized, mass-produced wine, and you didn't drink water enough. You're dehydrated.
You mentioned, I'm glad you clarified that, and we do like to educate our listeners. You said something that I thought about during the conversation. You mentioned the word mass production. So with that mass production, to me, and I'm not a wine expert, but I'm just trying to think chemically wise, the mass production maybe doesn't allow the wine to actually, like you said, fermentate long enough to make it really um to avoid it being cheap, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If it was able to sit long enough, it would probably change the texture and the fermentation process. Because this is the fermentation, the longer the wine sit, the better. But because now it's being mass produced, you're trying to almost you're taking
accelerate
away.
and
Yeah.
taking it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on that?
So you have a point there. I'm not going to say that they didn't ferment enough because you have to ferment in order to have wine, right? Otherwise, if you under ferment it, you're still in that grape juice kind of category, right? So when you're fermenting wine, whichever wine. I think for the wine, I'm not a winemaker, right? So I'm going to kind of simplify this because I don't deal with that whole process. But it's about fermenting the wine for the right amount of time,
Mm.
right? That's what the producer's looking at. If you hold it in longer, the wine's going to be drier. If you take it out sooner, the wine's going to be sweeter because even though we drink dry wine, the grapes are super sweet because the sugar is what through the fermenting process is what turns into alcohol, right? But yeah, they do uh, uh, um, gimmick the wine. So, for example, some wines they want to be because everybody. I think one of the first notions or for one of the first tastes that everybody says, "Oh, I can feel this taste in wine," is the oak, is the wood.
Mm.
Uh, so some wineries, mass production wineries, they'll use gimmicks. So they won't necessarily age their wines in barrels, which barrels have a super high cost and they take long, but they'll mix wood chips in the wine
Mm.
Oh,
in a steel barrel, for example, in a steel vat. And just so they can absorb that flavor of wood. So it's a gimmick, But we're also talking about stabilizers, and we're talking about the sulfites, which occur naturally in wine, but they're added in a lot of these different wines because sulfites are really something that helps preserve the wine, right? So, and other junk that they put in there, I don't even know what chemicals they put in there to kind of stabilize it and make it, because listen, nature is different every year. The
Right.
weather is a little bit different every year. One year you get a little more rain, next year you don't. I mean, even us here in Florida with the oranges, there are years that we have a better yield than other years because it's nature. And
Right.
with the wine, with the grape, it's the same thing. So these guys, that's why there's a difference between one year and the next. Why do people say, "Oh my gosh, this 1999 year was phenomenal"? Because all the stars aligned that year. They had a perfect weather and this, and that, and they had a higher quality wine. Whereas in the next year, it was all, yeah, good wine, right? But it's not considered the high quality of that special year, right? And with these cheap wines, they want you to have that better quality experience or within their realm of what,
Consistent, right?
yeah. So they stabilize the wine every year.
I need to ask you this question.
Yeah.
I had no idea that certain individuals cannot drink wine that has oak and cork involved in this process. What's your take on that? I didn't notice. I had a client that was on, I guess, was on the show, and she says, "Do you have wine that has not been infused with oak, like you was talking about the oak, or processed with oak, or has the cork oak screw attached to it, or something like that?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, I never heard that before.
Yeah, she's allergic to it. She's allergic to the way in which it was processed. It was processed in an oak barrel or a cork containment. She could not drink it.
Wow.
And she has to go to a restaurant and she says something about, is it, do you have wine that's not in
Hmm.
cork something and infused? And I was like, holy crap, I didn't even know that kind of stuff exists. What's your take on that? Have you ever heard that before?
I am just dumbfounded as you were when you first heard it because I've never heard of that. I've never heard anybody that has I mean, I've heard of all kinds of allergies, but never a sensitivity to oak or
Yeah, it
natural
was like
cork.
literally 2 weeks ago. They came to the studio and they was like, "You have wine?" And I said, "Yeah." And it was, and she was asking me the serious question. I said, "Look, I don't drink wine, but that's a new one on me. So I might just start asking people, are you allergic to the
That
cork?"
yeah,
Oh,
that's a special arrangement. Person has to put it down before they arrive.
Yeah, yeah. So do you ever
that's
heard of
something.
anything like that before, Jason?
No, but I hope I don't ever catch that allergy. But the good thing for her is that there are tons of thousands and thousands of options, right? Because there's all different sorts of ways which wine is what the bottle of wine is closed. So there are wines that are unoaked, we call them, right?
That's
So
what
they
she
are
said.
Oh.
Unoaked. Yeah, that
uh,
was it.
so they're aged in steel vats, or some are in clay amphors, big things of clay or cement or concrete, right?
Right.
So and there's a true purpose. This doesn't mean that the wine is inferior by no means.
Right.
Oh.
It's just a different style of wine, right? Different wines. You have the screw tops, right, which don't have a cork at all. You have some wine that's sold with I don't know how she does. I'm assuming she does okay with synthetic corks. So there's also a number of
I think
wineries
she
that
just says she goes to restaurants because I did ask her. I said, "Well, how do you do that?" Because I've never heard of it before. She said she would simply ask, "How was it infused?" And kind of like what you just said, how was it made, and make sure it doesn't have a thing on it. If not, it will mess her up. And I was like, wow, had no idea.
wow, I
Now,
didn't
my
either.
my next question to you is, let's talk about the different types of wine. Uh, what are your top wines? Let's start with the top tier. Like, give me five good top white wines, red wines, Rieslings, and Moscatos. Oh, I said Riesling.
Yeah, the
Now, I
sweet
do like
ones.
Rieslings. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
like it, but I like to sip on them. I can't just, you know,
I can't drink Moscatos anymore. It makes me sick. I can only have dry wine now.
why is that? That's a good question. And then answer my other question. Why is that she can't drink it no more?
I think because of a Moscato wine is typically it's not full on sweet, but it's like a semi-sweet or semi-dry wine. So maybe she's referring to the sweetness of it, that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So give me your countdown.
You
That's
want brands or you want type of grapes?
we're
Because
not
it,
going to talk brands. We're going to talk regions in the world,
okay.
Yeah.
which is better because otherwise we get too specific into something that. So when you want to talk about top wines,
Like if I'm
let me.
going to the store, let me simplify it. If I'm going to the liquor store, or we have what's called wine tree here and all kind of wine things. If I'm going in there in a mass market of tons of stuff, give me five good ones that are red, five good ones that are that, blah, 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 blah.
But even if you go to the wine store, like I go to Total Wines in Florida,
We have a Total Wines here.
okay, they separate it by region. Italians, French.
But that don't tell me nothing. That's not gonna.
Yeah, but it's a start.
Yeah.
I want to know what he's going to say about that.
Okay.
All
It's
right.
your brother. I'm not gonna argue.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Jason.
So it's a tough question because it depends on the person's taste, right?
Mhm.
Because what could be an amazing wine for me, you try it, you're like, nope, I can't do it. I need something X, Y, and Z, right? That's why a lot of these big wine critics magazines, and you have Wine Enthusiast, you have Decanter, you have James Suckling, and all these big guys who have their point systems, right? It's a guidance. So, oh, this is 93 points, this is 99, this is 100 points on those great years, right? Or this is an 86 points, or whatever it is. That's their criteria. Does it help guide you? It does, because a guy that knows about wine is saying, hey, this is good stuff, this is better than this. But is it going to be an absolute? It's not going to be, because the guy can, let's see, for example, there's an Italian wine called Barolo. It comes from the Piedmont region, like northwestern Italy. And Barolos are among the most expensive wines in Italy. Obviously, there's a bit of a spectrum in there, but the higher ends, they're arguably the most expensive wines in Italy. And they're made with a grape called Nebbiolo, which is very high in tannins. Tannins is that when you try uh, red wine, especially, your mouth just dries up and puckers up, right? Like eating a green banana or something like that. Those are the tannins in the wine, which is very much something that's needed. It's a part of the wine. So Barolo has very high tannins. If you take somebody that's used to drinking Moscato, right? Like the little sweet wine, also Italian, white wine, semi-sweet, and this is all they drink. You give them a Barolo to drink, even though maybe let's say you're giving them a $500-600 bottle of wine. You're like, this is an amazing wine. It's going to change they take one sip of that and they're like, nope, I can't do it. I rather drink my 7.99 Moscato,
Hmm.
you know. So that's it's relative. But going back to I extended myself here, but going back to your question, I would say not only your taste in wine, but what are you planning on doing? Are you sipping wine by itself while you're watching a game on TV? Or are you pairing it with food? Are you going to have it with friends? Are you doing just some appetizers, right? Because then you go into the whole wine pairing thing,
Mhm.
which in certain aspects is taken a lot more seriously than it really should. Listen, I try to, if you look at my Instagram, Wine Seeker, I try to bring a little comedy into it, and I try to dumb it down a little bit. In a certain aspect, you don't, in the sense that you don't have to think of wine as this big snobbish thing, and I have to wear a tuxedo in order to talk about wine, and no, it's something that all of us should enjoy, and whatever your bracket is, price wise, enjoy that wine, right? So you asked me, I'm going to be kind of all around the board.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about wine regions. So Napa Valley, obviously for us here in the States, is the most famous wine region, is where most of the people drink their wines from. And Napa is really known for their cabs or their Cabernet Sauvignon wines. And they have a specific profile because of the climate, because of the earth, right? They call it the terroir. It's a French word for just the whole environment in which the grape is growing. But then you take that same cab and you buy one from Chile, and same grape, same fermentation, right? Another producer, obviously, but you'll find it different. Chile is a little bit more of a cooler climate, so you'll find that in the wine you don't have as much like a Napa Cab, as much as that big boldness, red fruit, sometimes even like cooked. fruit, cooked strawberries, jammy, we call it, right? You're going to have it a little more restrictive, a little drier. You're going to have fruit, but you'll have probably a little more earthy tastes in it. The same thing if you take the same grape, Cab, and you're taking it from France, right? So it really depends. So Napa Valley is a great place to buy wine from, uncontested. Talking about some countries, France, most of the grapes that if I tell you to name three or four grapes, even if you're not a person that the person isn't somebody that knows a lot about wine, they'll probably say, okay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, and Sauvignon Blanc. They're all French grapes. So the whole world has really been populated by French grapes. So France is, in a lot of senses, the mothership, right, of wine. But then you go to Italy, they have Nebbiolo, like I told you before. You drink Pinot Grigio, another Italian native grape. So every country in the world, a lot of times they have their own native grapes. Even in the U.S., people don't know that. On the East Coast, we have Norton. Norton is an indigenous grape from the U.S. that is used to make wines. Can you walk into your wine shop and buy a wine made with Norton? Probably not, because they're normally smaller wineries, smaller productions. But if you adventure, if you're out and about in Georgia and West Virginia and in places like that, you'll find at wineries wines made with our own indigenous grape Norton. So
It's so cool.
Man, I'm
it,
I'm I'm mesmerized. I'm gonna have a glass after this. I don't know what I'm gonna open up, but
I could listen to this all day. It's so
yeah,
educational. I love it.
yeah. So you mentioned before we wrap up, you mentioned food, and I mean, you can just go on and on with wine. Everything that you're talking about, I hear it that you need to do white wines with fish, and So, what's your take on all that? Is that really true, or is this just because you just said two parts? If I'm a Moscato guy or a Riesling guy, am I really gonna drink red wine with a steak if I'm used to doing that? What you am I making any sense on what I'm saying with this, Jason?
absolutely. I talk about that stuff all the time. And it's really interesting you brought that up because yeah, there are some notions, right? I mean, everybody knows that with a steak, it's red wine, and with a salad or with fish or seafood, it's white wine. But there are nuances in there as well. There's some that you really can't change much. I mean, you're gonna have some grilled shrimp, or you're gonna have some ceviche in a Peruvian restaurant, and you're bringing out a big, bold Napa Cabernet, like I told you. The tannins in that wine are going to shock with the iodine that's in the fish, and you'll get like a metallic fishy taste in your mouth. So it's really going to be an
Oh,
unpleasant experience.
wow, didn't know.
Now, you talk about a Pinot Noir, which is a red grape, but it's all the way down here on the scale of lightness or boldness of the wine, right? It's a much lighter wine. It's a more delicate wine. So you can take Pinot Noir and have that with seafood, not a problem. So there are
Man, I've
some.
had that, and I love that. I love
Yeah.
that kind of wine. We just had some for my nephew's birthday, and it was superb. And we had it exactly with seafood, and it was,
Look at that.
yeah, it was great. Um, it's another question I got to ask real quick. I'm gonna let you ask a question before we wrap up. I remember on my birthday. This was like the first time I had wine. I remember now. Thank you, universe, for that. And download. I mixed white and red wine, and I had the hangover like you would not imagine. Was that a placebo? Because somebody said that's what happened to me. They said you never should mix red and white wines. That was
But
the first time I ever had
but
them to drink.
but how much did you have?
Quite a bit. It was my birthday.
Okay, so that's probably the problem, in my opinion, because wine tasting, that's what you do. You try several wines, but you're not, you know.
You know what? I appreciate that input, but I'm gonna ask the expert.
Okay.
What do you think about it, Mr. Expert?
And she's, yeah, I have to admit, she's kind of on the button
Yeah.
there. It's not really about mixing because you're still within that fermented family, right? White wines, red wines, even beer you can kind of throw in there. When you're mixing distilled drinks, so you're having whiskey and all of a sudden you pop open a bottle of wine, and you do that'll mess you up.
Okay.
But mixing white and reds, as long as you're pleased, not mixing them in the same glass and trying to make your own wine concoction. That's a whole other conversation, but there's no problem at all. Typically, a night will even start with. I mean, you go to sometimes to dinner at a person that knows and enjoys a lot of wine. They'll probably receive you as a guest and offer you some champagne first, so you can or some kind of sparkling wine, so you can start with a sparkling or a red wine or a rosé even or something like that. And then as the night goes in and you go into to your meal, change over to a red wine without any problems. I mean, you go to restaurants and they have these wine pairing dinners, right? And they'll serve you a white with your salad in the beginning, then they'll serve you another white with your appetizer, then they'll serve you a red with the other dish and things like that, And then afterwards, at the end, they'll still serve you some dessert wine. So there's no problem. You were probably, I don't know what kind of wine you're drinking, but you were probably dehydrated. You were
That's,
probably just drinking wine and not drinking water, right? So
you're
so
right.
that
You're
helps me.
100% right. It was my birthday. I was young. I had no idea what I was doing, but I know they had expensive wine because I knew who threw my party. But I just
Yeah.
remember them saying you should never have mixed the two together. But it's probably what you said, Jessica. I
Mm.
shouldn't have consumed a lot of that. Before we, let me ask another question before we wrap up.
No, I have one too.
Let me, go ahead, ladies first.
Okay. So you said not to, as long as you're not mixing them both in the same glass, but I like blends.
Uh
So
oh.
what's the difference?
Uh oh. What's the blend?
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, he's going to tell you what a blend is.
But you're not the one doing the blend.
That's
Leave that
right.
that up to the winemaker, right? So there are a lot of wines which we call a single varietal, which is a Napa Cab, 100% Cabernet, right? And tons of other Chardonnays and white Riesling. That's a grape, Riesling. You take a bottle of Riesling, it's 100% Riesling. Now, certain wines you'll buy here in the US, we see a lot of red blends. That's how we'll label our wines here for the most part, right? And then you'll have to go digging to find out, okay, what's in there, right? What kind of blend is it? But you'll take to talk about a famous region in the world, Bordeaux in France, right? You talk about Bordeaux wine, exquisite wine, high-end stuff. They're all blends. So, and as a matter of fact, I get a question a lot. Oh, is a single grape in the wine, is it better than a blend? Is a blend, why is it blended? Is it because it's inferior grapes? Nope, because that's the style that they wanted in the wine. So you talk about Bordeaux, well, you'll find obviously there's lower ends in there, but you'll find wines for 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, $10,000 a bottle, and they're all blends, right, of grapes.
How many grapes do they typically mix on a blend?
It depends. It depends what wine
Really?
you're tasting, who's making it. Bordeaux, there are typically four grapes in there, but sometimes there's three. So it really varies. I mean, and sometimes it can. Now I'm really going to mess you up. Sometimes it can vary. The same wine can vary from one year to the next. So the wine this year, the grapes this year, the winemaker might be tasting it and says, they got too ripe. We had too much of a sun, and so more sugar, and I'm missing a little acidity in the grape. They might pull in another grape and mix it in there, or switch out another grape in the blend in order to bring that acidity, because the wine has different things that you're looking for, right? For a balanced glass of wine. So they'll change that around a little bit. So blended wines are just as good or just as bad as single varietal wine, all depending on what wine you're buying.
Jason, what would you recommend for someone, a novice? Um, any suggestions for a novice that wants to understand wine? What would you recommend them to do? How would they start out to get involved in understanding wine? What would be your suggestion to a novice?
I would say become friends with your local wine shop, right? And I say wine shop because you go to Walmart, you're not going to have somebody right at Walmart that knows anything about wine.
Right.
And some of the selections that they have on there, well, so I would say get to know somebody that you can come in, and little by little they get to know you. They get to know your taste. What do you like? So if you talk to a sommelier or somebody that knows about wine, he says, "Oh, what wine should I get?" Some of the first questions you'll get is, "So what have you liked in the past? What are you going to eat? What are you going to serve the wine with?" Right? So all that is going to come into play. So number one, that's it. A tip that I really like to give, as far as now we're talking about quality of wine and not so much the type of wine,
Mhm.
is I like to go like so we all don't drink expensive wine every single day of the week, right? Yeah, you maybe have a better bottle for the weekend or for a special occasion, but you need that Tuesday night bottle that you're just going to pop open, right? And you're not going to spend 50, 60, 100, $150 on. So go to a producer. Again, your wine guy will help you find that, but go to a producer that does high-end stuff, high-end wine, five, 600, 300, whatever, dollar bottles of wine, and go to their entry level.
Hmm.
So sometimes this guy, you get an Italian producer, let's say a, a Chianti, for example, right? Or not a Chianti, a Tuscan wine. You get a producer of high-end Tuscan wine, Antinori, for example. These guys produce crazy wine, amazing stuff, two, three, four, $500 plus. But you can buy Antinori at $10 at their entry level.
Hmm.
It's amazing wine. You're paying it for $10. Maybe it's not the cream of their crop, obviously, right? It's picked a little bit different, it's handled a little bit different. However, Antinori is not going to put their name on junk, right?
Mhm.
Because it's the same name. They don't have a separate brand. Oh, let's put a different brand. It's owned by us, but it's a different brand for the cheap stuff. They have a name deal. So you buy that $10 bottle of Villa Antinori, for example, you have an amazing experience with a Tuscan blend, without having to dish out two, $300 for a bottle of wine. So I tell everybody that,
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that was yeah.
go to those big.
That was great information. I'm gonna definitely keep your number in my contact because we got to keep wine up in here all the time. Before we wrap up, you're doing another amazing things right now. You're getting ready to open up a wine bar. Tell me a little bit about that and uh, not the exact day because nobody knows exactly when you go open, but tell us the reason why and what's it's going to consist of and probably about when it's going to launch.
So this is an interesting story because so I have partners in the wine bar, and they were former clients of mine in banking, and we 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 got a closer relationship than your regular banker and client relationship, right? I was their banker for a number of years, and they're already kind of in the business, right? They have a club in Fort Lauderdale. They have a couple bars that they run. So and most of them, their background is hospitality to begin with, right? As opposed to mine. So we just started talking about wine and talking about what if, and the idea just started growing out of there. They had an idea of maybe at their club doing a pop-up of wine one night, right? Just maybe have me there introducing wine to the people that are there. But that idea, that never happened. The idea just kind of progressed into a wine bar. So we've been on this road for about a year and a half, a little over that. It's a long road when you're looking to, with construction and build out and all things like that. But we're almost done. We're hoping to in April we'll be open,
Okay.
and we're just about to start hiring now for our team. So that is something that for me is a big deal because that is truly, aside from some of the wine classes and tastings that I do, I mean that's truly me getting into the commercial side of things, into the business side of wine.
What's the name of the location and where it's going to be located at?
So Through the Vine is the name of the bar. Love that name, Through the Vine. And we're in a neighborhood called Flagler Village in Fort Lauderdale.
It's a very nice area. It's gentrifying. It's becoming amazing. It's a very hot spot.
Okay, I'll definitely be there. Now, you also are independent where you go out and you do setups and educate and so forth. How can tell me a little bit about that and what do you do on that end?
Well, I do private functions, right? So I've done from birthday parties to 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 bachelor parties to corporate gatherings. So we just put on a program. I have different options of I call them experiences, right? So different experiences the person can choose from, or the different tastings they can choose from. And we bring everything. We bring the wine. We bring and build on set all the charcuterie boards and everything like
All
that.
the
So you'll be
pairings. Yeah.
yeah, all the parents. So you'll be wine and dined, all the while I'm there just talking about wine, answering people's questions, introducing the wines that we're tasting, that whole idea of taking them by the hand, right? And walking them through the process. Oh, I've never been on a tasting before. Well, let's smell this. Can you smell this? You know, without influencing too much, because
Right.
the suggestive mind is very powerful, but kind of guiding the people through the process of tasting wine.
How can the viewers reach out to you to be a part of your new establishment, and how can they contact you if they want to use your services?
Absolutely. They can contact me on my personal email, which is jasonjavens@gmail.com. And on my Instagram, it's called Wine Seeker. So it's @_wine_seeker_. And that's where I kind of make wine something for the people, something for the public, right? We're not going to take it too seriously. We're going to talk about suggestions and pairings and things like that. We're also going to goof off a little bit to keep things light. But that's where we'll have good contact. So anybody can feel free to DM me on Instagram or send me an email or something like that. And I'd be more than glad to engage.
You know, this has definitely been a great educational experience for not only myself, but definitely for the viewers. I learned a lot today. Jessica, thank you so much for getting in contact with you, brother, and having to come on the show. It's crazy. We got tons of wines in here. I know nothing about them, but now I do. You know what I mean? So before we wrap up, Jessica, my co-host, celebrity, new podcast coming out. Before we wrap up, tell the viewers once again about your new podcast.
My podcast will be coming out this spring.
Yeah.
In many different channels, which I'm happy, and we're working very hard here to get that done. So
How many
this
shows
is
have you
season one.
done so far?
I would say maybe 25 shows so far, roughly.
You're a workaholic.
Well, yeah,
It's informative.
that's the beast
yeah.
mindset, right?
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you and working hard side to side with me and being my producer. So thank you. But my podcast is about transforming your life inside out into a life that you truly love, and inspiring people to allow themselves to step into something that they might not even be aware. So just bringing that awareness, that influence, so people all around the world can just live a life they love and make it a better world.
Make sure you guys tune in this spring for Jessica Javens Talk Podcast. Jason, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast
Beast
Crayton
Crayton.
Show.
Show.